Okay, so I believe you've just carried out a knowledge transfer project with the University of East London, and I think you were comparing the sort of costs and performance of new servers compared to refurbished ones. Can you perhaps just share us some of the findings of this project?
Yeah, so we're about halfway through the KTP at the moment. The first stage involved benchmarking, so we've done hundreds of hours of benchmarking new and refurbished components and configurations. That's been really good because that's kind of already provided us a significant amount of information and research that's been verified by an external academic body. And it's allowed us to submit a paper to the IEEE around the difference between remanufactured or refurbished servers and new. But it's also had some really interesting findings around energy consumption of the previous generation of servers. So I think most people would kind of understand that refurbished equipment is probably as good as new. This has kind of proved that and said that that's exactly the case, that there is no significant difference between a new component and a refurbished component. But the real big part of the KTP is the slowdown of Moore's law piece, which is kind of showing that in the last sort of 5 years, the most recent generations of servers have had small incremental performance improvements, but as offset with higher energy draws at idle. So it's quite a massive piece of research in regards to the current dogma of refreshing every 3 years to get energy efficiency improvements, because we're just not seeing that anymore. That's just not the case anymore. But it's a significant finding.
Okay, and I guess the IT industry in general is perhaps a little bit under the radar environmentally, certainly compared to, say, the airline industry and others. But I'm sure with all the digital transformation, there's a lot more devices, etc. So energy consumption levels are going up, thanks to it. But do you think the IT industry can sort of make a difference as you know, for example, with what you're doing? Is it possible to have some environmental improvements alongside responding to the digital transformation movement, I suppose?
Yeah, it's interesting that you've kind of chosen the air travel industry there, because digital and air travel experts kind of think they're comparable at around about 2%. The only difference is that the IT industry is by 2030 due to be approaching more of like 5.5% of emissions and energy, which is comparable with the world's car fleets. So you can see that the digital agenda is becoming significantly larger. But I think it's an important part of how companies sort of offset emissions is with digital agendas. So we've seen during the coronavirus decreases in car emissions, but we've seen an increase in emissions generated through data. So I think you're exactly right. I think we have to look at sustainable options around that. I think the largest focus at the moment in ICT is around e-waste, because that's the most visible stream we see. So I think it's growing about 3 to 5% globally. Around about 50 million tons a year is the actual waste stream. I think scrutiny on data centers, because they're contributors to that in quite vast amounts, I think scrutiny on data centers is going to become much more targeted around the actual data center and how they impact both on emissions at use phase and the waste section. But I don't think sustainability in IT is incompatible. I think with the right approach and adopting sort of circular methods, I think the ICT sector can offset and contribute to a positive procurement sort of outcome that's both sustainable from a waste point of view, use phase point of view, minerals extraction point of view. So yeah, I can see that it's something that's becoming more of a problem, but I think there are ways to make managing your ICT assets sustainable and effective. I think digitalization is a massive part of sustainability. If you look at the UN global goals, all 17 of the goals have digitalization at the heart of reporting and recording. So I think what they're saying is that digital transformations are a necessary function of businesses. And it's about how you approach that determines whether or not it's an effective and sustainable way of approaching that transformation, as opposed to just a use and replace mechanism.
You referenced in there the sort of current working situation where a lot of us obviously are working from home, not going to the office. Clearly far less cars on the road, that's good, but then probably not more IT use, just different places. But yeah. Do you think this sort of working from home, new normal, whatever people are calling it, is sustainable and I guess environmentally beneficial, or is it quite a delicate balance as to where the trade-offs occur?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is the current situation has pushed digital agendas forward at a rate that most people were kind of not anticipating. I think they were looking at maybe implementing slow move towards remote and mobile working, and this has kind of made the decision for a lot of companies. And I think what we've realised is that it's much more workable than perhaps people would have anticipated. It's been a big change for us. We had no remote workers when this started. Now we have sort of 50-60% of the workforce, and they got remote quickly, and we've had some of our best months as a business ever. So I think it can work, and I think it's accelerated something that needed to happen for a lot of businesses. I think the previous dogma that you have to be in the office to be productive has been proven to be quite, false for a lot of industries. Now, manufacturing, there's not a lot you can do around that, and we're, half our business is manufacturing, so people need to be at work. But for those that don't, adding that flexibility in, decreasing the reliance on the actual physical structures within the business, the significant cost savings, and we've seen from the emissions point of view, we've seen emissions drop. We've seen, the air become cleaner in quite a lot of key areas. In regards to like Earth Overshoot Day, that was the 25th of July this year, which is the day when we've used up our materials. And because of the effects of COVID, that's shifted to like late August now. So that's a significant jump. We've actually provided an extra month's worth of resources on the planet, or drawn down a month less, if you like, because of this change. And I think the key thing is to make sure that we adopt the good parts of this, which is the decreased commutes, the increased flexibility, but don't keep the worst parts, which is the data usage part. A lot of people are streaming a lot more, a lot of people are watching a lot more, a lot of people are doing, video conferences, whereas before it would have been a text message. Certainly, you want to chat to your family, now there's the idea that you just pop on Teams or something like that for half an hour and have a face-to-face chat, whereas actually it probably would have been a phone call or a text message or another keep in touch sort of mechanism. And if we do that and go back to the way we were working before, we're going to be worse off. So we have to be very careful, I think, about that we take the good out of this and perhaps try and offset some of the bad.
And we don't want to step into the world of politics, because I guess we could be here all day, but the government sort of, I guess they've realised the economy is not in the best of shape, and suddenly they're telling us all to rush back to the office. So I guess we use public transport, buy a sandwich at lunchtime, etc.
Yeah.
But do you think that's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction? And if it's possible, we need to have a maturer conversation. This is an opportunity, as you say, to perhaps remodel or certainly analyse the work practices and come up with some kind of new idea, best practices going forward.
Yeah, I think like we talked about, we've got to grasp the opportunity that's been presented, which is to revolutionise the way that people view offices and business and relationships. And I think the back to work dogma politically, I don't think that's the right approach to say go back to normal. And I'm not saying that that's what they're saying, but we need to be careful that we don't go back to normal. What we've had is an opportunity to make a significant contribution to reducing a lot of things that are negative about work, about travel, about transport. We need to make sure that we're still taking those wins that we've seen in the short term. I'd hate to see us revert back to losing that flexibility, losing that benefit time, and losing that sort of way of building relationships, and go straight back to how it was before, because I think this is a once in a generation approach. So yeah, like I said, without being overtly political, I don't think we need to go back to how it was. I think we can create a better way of working, and this has been that break that allowed us to do that. For us as a business, we've had some massive wins while this has been going on, not necessarily just financially, but we've had sort of talks at 15 different speaker events, which have been higher footfall than would have been in person probably. We've published lots of articles. Our KTPs remained on track despite some challenging situations. So it's shown that this can work, and we're reviewing everything we do and using this time to do that. And I would encourage other businesses to do the same.
And I guess on the flip side, one of the negative things is the supply chain has come under scrutiny again in a lot of industries. With global supply chain and stuff like that. Specifically on the sort of IT hardware service side, are you aware of any sort of issues with that? And again, does the refurb market, is that sort of in some way shielded from that? What's the sort of picture of that particular sector?
I think the supply chain was struggling beforehand for new. We were aware that Intel couldn't produce enough Xenon processors for current market demand prior to this. So they were asking server manufacturers to kind of wait in line so that Google and Microsoft could have theirs, and then everyone else would kind of wait behind that. Refurb, because most of the stuff you're holding stock of, hasn't had that shock. So we've been able to meet demand. We've had 99% next day deliveries for the last 4 months on refurb stock because we physically have it. We're not waiting to manufacture or produce it. We have that stock available. So I think the refurb and remanufacturing businesses have actually weathered the storm better than most because they physically hold stock. It's opened up a lot of conversations with customers for us that couldn't have new anymore, have used refurb and now probably won't go back because they've kind of seen the benefits now, and it wasn't an option before. It wasn't a risk averse piece, which is what tends to be in the procurement processes of most businesses. They've kind of said, well, we can't look at refurb because it's risky. That sort of risk has been taken away by saying, well, we've got no choice. Supply chain can't do new, so it's refurb or nothing. Okay, we've taken refurb, and then the question's now been, well, why would we go back to new? This hasn't had any impact on our business other than we've got it quicker and it's the same quality and it costs less. So I think, this might have been a bit of an eye-opening time for a lot of people regards to how they address their supply chain from a local point of view. I think outside of the tech industry, people are looking at local supply chains, and now within tech, I think that's becoming bigger, that you can say, well, I can have everything I want on my doorstep, so I'm probably going to do that rather than ordering bulk from out of region, I suppose.
Okay, and that's I'm presuming that's the service side, but I know you also do a laptop sort of refurb business. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so that product offering fits in perfectly with what we do because we're configure to order specialists. So we know how to configure systems. Now, laptops are much easier to configure than servers. So what we've done is we've launched a service that kind of solves a pain point for most companies, which is the retirement of existing assets. Your average laptop's got 6 or 7 years in it, but tends to get refreshed on a 3-year cycle because of warranties or lease programs or things like that. So what we've done is we've kind of said, if you do a 2 or 3 year upgrade of your current hardware, it will probably last for 6 to 7 years, saving you a full recycle stage. So, if you've got an i5 or i7 processor, that's going to be good for word-based applications, for general browsing, for anything except for top-tier applications. That's going to be good for 6 to 7 years at least. So we launched a service that says you can do performance level upgrades on SSD and RAM to kind of make the most of that good processor and that good kit. And then it's a matter of cleaning up the kit, potentially replacing keyboards and things like that if there's any issues. The main benefit of that then is that you're extending use phase by double. So from a cost point of view, it's going to be about 80 to 90% cheaper on each refresh cycle than buying new. But the components that go inside are new. So you're getting a brand new SSD, a brand new set of RAM. But because it's small level upgrades, it's significantly more cost effective to do it that way. The advantage as well is that you're going to have a much better control of your stock, because you could say send 400 away for upgrade, get them back in a couple of days, and they're ready to go out. Whereas if you got 400 new laptops, you'd have to re-image them, add new, get them up to spec, redo the asset side of stuff, redo upgrades. You could just roll your stock much more conveniently here. And like I said, the cost savings massive, but environmentally it's a huge benefit because you're not wasting a perfectly good product. And then at the end of its life cycle, you look for somebody like an ITAD business that will then buy that back off you and sort of regain some of the original cost in it as well, and then do possibly a refurbished purchase on the actual 6-year end of life. So there's significant ways to decrease costs and sort of look after your profits.
And I guess some people might be a little bit concerned about sort of quality control and warranty. So how does the sort of refurb laptops, what do you sort of stand behind them compared to if someone's buying new stock?
I think that is the key consideration for a lot of people. Is refurb historically has been seen as risky because it's not as sort of well policed as new would be, but that's changed significantly with regards to a lot of the requirements on refurbishers recently. So we offer a 3-year warranty to offset that risk. So if you sit there and think, well, if you buy new, you get 3 years, well, we'll offer you the same 3-year warranty on refurb. So you get the exact same protection that you'd get from an OEM with regards to warranty. Our internal testing procedures mean we individually line test every single component, whereas your average OEM will only test, say, 10% of the batch. So we have a lower failure rate than most OEMs. Our failure rate is at 0.5% on a component level, whereas you'd be looking at 2 to 3% for an OEM, just because out of 100 parts, you're only testing 10 of them. So what we find is a lower failure rate, lower return rate, and the exact same warranty or even further warranties than you'd get brand new. And that's kind of one of the key ways to offset any perception of risk.
And believe that quite a lot of the OEMs themselves, to be fair, do offer refurb programs. So again, can you just sort of compare what yourselves do compared to what, I guess obviously they have a bit maybe of a vested interest in obviously trying to sell nice shiny new servers or laptops as opposed to refurb, but they do offer it. So yeah, just some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's not their core business. So the people that are doing it are pretty good at what they're doing, but they primarily sell new. 99% of what they sell is new, 1% might be refurbished. We're the other way around. 99% of what we sell is refurbished, 1% is new. And the new stuff's easy. You plug and play. The refurbishing piece is simple when you're good at it, but it takes a lot of experience and it takes a lot of knowledge and a lot of technical ability to constantly be keeping up to refurbishing the equipment to the appropriate standard. So the OEMs do offer refurbished programs, but it's a small part of what they do where their vested interest is in new. Warranty wise as well, they tend to offer much shorter warranties on their refurbished equipment. So they might offer a 1-year warranty on a refresh, whereas we'd offer 3. And I think one of the key things of using refurbished is that you can do component level swap outs. So if you buy from an OEM, everything's from that OEM. So it has to be, memory, storage, everything is that. Whereas we can do third-party combinations that are much more flexible. So you can build much more truly configured servers than you could do from an OEM build, who are kind of selling pre-built kits, as it were, or building materials with small changes. So one of the key things of using an actual refurbishment company is that flexibility in the actual out of the box build.
And I guess the other thing new versus refurb, I guess there are some applications, I'm thinking maybe high performance computing, etc., where you just do have to buy the latest to get the best performance. So there is a little bit of the market where refurb won't have a play. Is that fair to say?
That's completely fair. Yeah, I think there's high performance needs that require the latest technology. The stuff that's coming out that's brand new is better on performance. It might be slightly worse on energy draw, but it has a higher top end performance. So for those use cases where you need that, it's about appropriate choice. So if you're at a Netflix or you're doing AI or you're doing some really high level graphics rendering, new's probably the most appropriate in a lot of those areas. The real trick is understanding your asset portfolio and deciding where do you need new and where don't you need new. So where are you using 60% or 40%? Why would you buy new and use 35%? Whereas where are you using 90, 95% and you need a little bit of extra room, that's the place for new. And there is undoubtedly a massive place for new in the market. And most of that is that high performance stuff. But you'd also be looking at how you want to configure your hardware. So if you're one of these high performance users, you're probably already thinking whether you use GPUs versus CPUs. So if you're already making those decisions, you might say, well, actually, if we change from CPU processing to GPU processing, we could use a refurbished GPU unit, and it would be a lot more cost effective. And the actual changes that you need to change how you're going to process things. So it's about understanding your requirements and then measuring that against your performance. And that's where you decide whether new or refurbished is the most appropriate. And that's something that a good IT manager needs to do themselves, is have that look and go, well, here's where I'm using less, here's where I'm using more, here's where I'd like to perhaps save some money or increase my budget or spend it on other things.
And just as a matter of interest, you say obviously an IT manager is well placed, he knows his company apps, etc. But is that something that you will help, work alongside those folks to give them the benefit of your sort of knowledge on what's most appropriate where?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the tricky part, I think. I think a lot of people sell you a system and tell you what a system does. Whereas what you really need to do is match that to the requirements. So, one of the first questions that you should be asking somebody when you're looking at, engaging with a customer is not what do they want, but what do they do? The understanding of what their architecture looks like, what their systems look like currently, and what they're trying to do going forward, how they're planning to scale. These are all the important questions, and these will help you identify where you can look at either component level switch outs, where you can look at whether you need a brand new system, whether you need to change how you're actually configuring your servers. And that's where the experience piece comes in. There's multiple ways to skin a cat with servers. And it's about the best knowledge at that time. And I wouldn't expect an IT manager to have to know everything about hardware, because what they really know is their system and how their users use it and what they need. And it's about just providing that to a company that can match that then to the hardware requirements. And that's why you go to a specialist, isn't it?
We covered a fair amount of ground. Are there any other sort of points you'd like to make, or last bits of advice, as you say, because it's, you know, a lot of people will be, I guess, again, because of the current situation, reevaluating their sort of IT infrastructure, servers, laptops being a part of that. What sort of things should they be considering, or you know, looking forward?
I think that the big thing is what we talked about previously, the sustainability angle. People need to be thinking about what they're doing with their old equipment, how they're getting rid of it, how they're safely sanitizing it, and finding a good IT asset disposition partner is crucial going forward, because I think companies are about to come under a lot of scrutiny on how they use and reuse IT assets. So the big piece now is going and speaking to people who know about the removal, sanitation, destruction phase alongside the refresh part. So, you know, I would look at what their current mechanisms are for refreshing and why they're doing that, and then go and find the research or speak to people like us who can provide you with a non-biased view on what they perhaps should be doing. And then, you know, look for the opportunities to be better, to configure better, to build better, to manage their components better. It's the right thing to do from a people, profit and planet point of view. They need to be engaging with people who know their business, and know what solutions are available on the market that they're perhaps not aware of. So that's the big thing really, is be open to new ideas and new ways of doing things, because it will probably be significantly better than what you're currently doing.
And I guess because often environmental issues are seen as, or, you know, doing things for the environment seen as costing money rather than saving. This is a win-win in the sense that you're going to benefit the environment, and presumably there's a cost benefit in there as well.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's looking for these zero-sum games where there doesn't have to be a winner and a loser, where everyone can be a winner. And it sounds really cheesy, doesn't it? Because you're saying, you know, I can do the right thing for the planet. And nearly always the perception is, yeah, but it's going to be less good, or it's going to cost more, or whatever. And what we actually have now is this perfect storm of loads of available equipment that is completely suitable at a significant decrease in price to new, that is very, very good for the environment, because you're talking of a carbon neutral acquisition. You know, if you're buying refurbished servers, the actual embodied energy cost of that equipment has already been paid. So whereas you describe, you know, if you recycle it, you might get 5% of it back. If you reuse it, you get 100% of it back. And it's a really effective mechanism for making a positive change. And like I said, the e-waste streams, there's 50 million tons. You could probably halve that and everybody be better off. And that's what I think we have to look for. We have to look for ways that help everybody, you know, and like you said, from a cost savings point of view, there's the significant savings to be made, and improvements in performance. And it's not a matter of having less budget, it's then spending it somewhere else. So if you're worried about, you know, issues around cyber, and you might want a top tier sort of, you know, threat prevention system or something like that, you have to find the money for that. Wouldn't it be great if you could get that and also get an improvement in your performance, and it not cost you anything additional to what was currently in your budgets? So it's that budget management piece that needs to become more effective, of, you know, choosing how you can solve other problems and offsetting it against potentially your hardware purchases.
Okay, well, that's great. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Will. Good to speak to you.